I started this by freely admitting that I've become like this really psychotic fan of Mark Lundholm. And here's how you have to know. There's a cigar shop that I found out Mark and I go to. We did not know we went to the same cigar shop. And the owner said, "Do you know Mark Lundholm comes here and he buys the same cigar you do? You're the only guys who that's the only cigar you buy." And I'm like, "Well, that's the rat dog who's been buying all my cigars." And as I was walking out, who walked in but Mark Lundholm? And I'm like, "Well, there you are." And Kyle was like, this guy. And I'm like, "Will you go on my podcast?" And your sweetheart said, sure. And so we finally found the day. You're finally here.
Yeah. And I appreciate you making me part of the crew that you have that wants to, just entertain or educate or enlighten or remind, I get to do a fair amount of podcasts because of my job. And, there's a lot of attention to somebody who performs. I'm a comedian. I mean, we're going to know that in a little bit, but because I have that platform, I get to reach a lot of people every week. But my lane is such that it's a mental health kind of avenue I take. I got a very specific niche. There's only, maybe 3 people in the country who do what I do. And I'm better than the other 2. And I don't know who they are.
You're not wrong.
But I'll say that I've been doing it a long time. Gary, that's the, if you're young, you've got a ton of energy for something.
Yeah.
When you get old, you've got a ton of experience for something. And they kind of go like this, energy young, and then experience older, and the energy goes down, but the experience can take you forward. So I've been doing this a long time, 15 different countries, 50 states, multiple times. I've got a lot of road work, that I've done. And, it helps. It helps. Like, you and I had a conversation earlier about, what kind of language do you want on this, Gary? And you said, well, I like to keep it kind of, PG plus, or, right in there with the, average Josephine, citizen. Cool. Cause I speak them all. I speak inmate, I speak homeless. I speak politician. Cause I've had to work for all of those populations. So I kind of want to know my market, so I know what language to use. If I go to France, if I'm going to Paris in December, I try to brush up on my French. I want to be a good guest.
Merci. I get it. And the same thing. You've just pretty much described me. You and I are on the same career trope, right? I mean, because I've been doing this a long time, in the multitude of decades. Okay. Do I want to say over 40 years? Sure. Over 40 years. And the same thing. I used to get by with so much enthusiasm. It was like your first night of lovemaking. There wasn't a lot of experience, but the enthusiasm carried you through. Well, now, what'd you say?
Who told you that?
It carried me through. What the heck? I wasn't really looking at, your first time out. You're not really thinking of your partner. Come on, let's be honest.
Well, I was 15 years old. And she was 25. So I don't know that, it was one of my parents' friends. And I grew up in a dysfunctional family. That will become clear as we speak, if it's appropriate. But I don't mind telling you this. This is still PG. I had a really good teacher. So
I did not. I was 16 and I was with a 16-year-old who was equally clueless, and she and I, let's just do this and never talk about it again.
But that the best thing to happen to everybody. You learn together, you love her, you speak afterwards. It's your own private, intimate thing. I didn't have that experience growing up with a lot, not with lovemaking, not with learning how to fight, not with learning. I grew up in Oakland, California, born and raised, and it was a rough go in the 60s. I'm 64. I was born in 1959. And in that period from, say, 0 to 17, I didn't make mistakes on my own. They included a lot of other people, a lot of other decimation of the population. I had a lot of collateral damage for the mistakes I made. That first time with that person, that lady, that wasn't a mistake. It wasn't one of them, but it was educational. And, I really, she was so, verbal and, dictatorial. You know what I mean? She controlled the situation. I didn't really have time to think about me. I wish I had. I was told where, what, when, how long, and again, you know? So it was one of those things that I got to be honest, I've never started a podcast with this topic.
What I tell you, when I told you when we started talking, I said, I don't have questions. I just want to talk to you. And that's the thing. First of all, you got the term again. I got the term, let's never talk about this again. So as I said, the enthusiasm carried me through, not so much for her. But
well, here's the thing about my first time. I don't know. I believe this is typical average male stuff. I told everybody. I told everybody. I was like, given the Medal of Honor. I got the Academy Award. I got some kind of, high level acceptance stuff. You've arrived. And I had no idea how good, bad, indifferent anything was. I just knew that was spectacular. And you hear stories as a child about things older people have done. Well, all of a sudden you're doing them and you're not an older person. There's a vacuum there of oops and what? So it was an experience, but it helped me in the long run to do things like slow down, think about your partner, all that other stuff that maybe we try to do now. And years later, it still makes me laugh at the, other topics too, going to prison, being on the street, being a drunk, leaving school in the 7th grade. A lot of stuff that I did. It makes me giggle now how I thought I knew what I was doing. There's a parallel there. It's a metaphor. Golf and lovemaking are a metaphor for everything in life. I don't know if you play golf, but with golf, you can hide for 9 holes. You can hide for 12 holes. You can hide from somebody that you're playing with, brand new, stranger to you. But 18 holes, you can't hide anger issues, racism, how people treat women, whether they're nice to pets. You can't hide for 18 holes. You can't.
You know what I say about golf? And this sounds like a joke, but golf and sex are the only 2 times where you will shout out your own name.
Funny. I got a 7-minute golf bit that I do when I'm working like a fundraiser, or I'm emceeing an awards banquet after the tournament for the scramble, or who what foursome won, who was closest to the pin, all that stuff. But I have a golf bit it's PG plus, but it's pretty raunchy in the mind. And one of the things I'll say is, at the very end of the bit, and I can do this under our parameters.
Dude, again, when I sit back and say it's, I go down any path you want to go down, right? So don't be afraid of that. Go ahead.
I appreciate that faith and trust. But as I finish up this 7-minute golf bit, it's about things like, I'm a Christian until that 3rd hole where I shanked one into the water. Stuff like that, and I get to the end of the golf bit, and it's really finely tuned by now. And so, I won't present anything that A, I didn't write, B, isn't right yet. So, when I'm ready to perform a bit, it's been sauced through, it's been strained, it's been, hammered out. Anyway, at the end of the bit, there's a crowd there that's just like the last 6.5 minutes. And I said, so like all good decisions, I ran it by the woman in my life. I said, what do you think of this? She goes, well, I don't understand that golf is like sex. And I said, well, it is and it isn't. She goes, well, how is it? I said, it's extremely, extremely pleasurable when you learn how to do it. She goes, oh, okay. And I said, the difference is on a golf course, there's 18 holes. And she goes, without missing a beat, she goes, yeah. Well, and if you're unsatisfied with your distance, you can grab another club. And they fall. I fell off the floor when she said that. I thought, she's a marketing major. She's not supposed to be funnier than me.
you know, my thing about golf is I tell people, our life, golf is this. Golf is your life is going so well that you pay to add frustration, because there is nobody in the world who plays golf who does not get pissed off at some point with their own performance.
It's a great teacher. And two things here. One is golf is one of those sports efforts, places you put your energy, where the very first tee box, the first swing, that's the last time I'm going to be even average the rest of the. That's that first swing. That after that, I'm not average. I'm less than, and I'm going to take my lumps, and I know it. The good part of that is I was playing with an old guy that I got paired up with. I've been playing about 15 years. Yeah. I started playing golf so that I could do business. A lot of business is done on the golf course. You get to know people, like I said, an honesty level, an integrity factor. You can't hide for 18 holes. You finish 18 holes, you know whether you would ever play with that person again, do business with them, introduce them to your family, tell them anything intimate. So it's a very, very good finding out place. I was playing with this old guy in Omaha. I brought my clubs. I was doing the Omaha Funny Bone there for a week. So I brought my clubs, and I was playing as a single in the morning, crisp air, wet course. It's early. It's 6:45. And this guy trumps out. He's about 70,000 years old. And comes to the tee box and he goes, hey, I'm a club member here. And they put it together today. And my first thought wrong was, oh, man, I got to carry this guy all day. He's going to slow me down. Second thought was worse. I'm going to tell him I'm sick, not feeling well, and I'm going to go home and go back to the hotel, make a different tee time somewhere. I'm going to lie to him. Third thought was, you ever have 15 in a row that don't help anybody, including you? So I stopped thinking, and I said, sure. He goes, you mind if I go first? First thought wrong. Second thought wrong. Third thought wrong. Yeah. Okay, Arnie. Yeah, you wait there. Go ahead. I'll watch you pipe one, you guy. He's about 5'6", 145 pounds. And he hits the ball right down the middle. Not long, but not bad. So about the third hole, I'm realizing this guy's good. He knows this game. He's been playing a long time. He hits the ball in the middle. He hits on the green. He puts it in. He knows this course. He knows this game. I don't know either one. I don't know the course. I don't know the game. So about the fourth hole, I hit one into the woods and I curse. And he hears me curse. And he walks over and he goes, hey, do you mind if I give you some advice? First thought wrong. Second thought wrong. Third thought wrong. Fifth thought was, I could kill him and bury him out here. Woods, and it'd take him a week to find him. I'll already be in Des Moines by then. You know what I mean? So I said, sure. What's your advice? He goes, you're really not good enough to get mad. And it hit me right in the face. And I went, say that again, please. He goes, you curse when you don't do well. You're not good enough to do well. So why do you curse? And I thought the circular logic of that was so profound. I thought, I'm not playing with Arnold Palmer. I'm playing with soccer. I'm playing with Shakespeare. I'm playing with a guy who might have been a pharaoh somewhere. And I thought, with the wisdom there, I've never forgotten that in a lot of areas. I'm not good enough to get angry when I'm not good enough, So my expectation level went way down. I had a really good round the rest of the day because I didn't care, right? It was like, dude, you're not, I'm not a guy who can get HBO to call me this morning, right?
Yeah.
Chappelle is, Bill Burr is, Kevin Hart is, Bert Kreischer is. I'm not. So when they don't call HBO, when they didn't call me this morning, I wasn't disappointed, Gary, not at all. In fact, if I do really well, then I'll put pressure on myself. If I can, I'll do it because I've got company doing it, or I'm not afraid to fail. And failure is really mental anyway. You know what I mean? Failure, unless you're talking about jumping across a canyon, that one might remind you, hey, this was a little more than failure. Anyway, so do you still play?
Oh, I play all the time. You and I are going to have to go out and play. I mean, we got to grab some cigars, go out and play. And I love the whole thing about golf. I played with a PGA Tour member one time, right? Because I have this weird job, just like you do too. You get to meet a lot of these people. And he goes, my thing with playing golf, as long as you are paying to play, you should never get upset. If you are being paid to play and you miss the cut and it's cost you $6,000 that you don't have, now you get to be angry. But when you just paid $40, $70, $120 to play this game, at no point should you get angry. You asked for this.
And professionally, now I have had appearances. I probably do about 300 appearances a year. I got Cadillac complaints, man.
Yeah, but that's a lot of work, especially for somebody our age.
Well, it is a lot of work, and sometimes for the first time ever, it happened last year. For the first time ever in my career, I was tired before I got on the plane in San Jose to leave town. I was tired before I left. That never happened in my career till last year. It started happening. It still happens more times than I'm comfortable with now because I'm older, right? And I work a lot and travel a lot, and travel, as mundane as it can be, sitting on a plane, it wears you out. And so the road will tell you who you are, who you're not, who you are today. The travel will do that. But quiet as it's kept, I still love my job. I love my work. But about 300 appearances a year, if I don't do well, I know. I'm being paid to appear. I'm being paid to talk. I'm being paid to entertain. I'm being paid to thrill or kill, really. And comedy has a fine edge to it where, too much, you cut something. It's like a scalpel. Too much, you cut somebody deep. Just the right amount, you cut just deep enough to get them to do their work or get rid of their abscess, kind of infectious. Hey, I don't like myself, and this is all mental health stuff. But I get on the road and I am disappointed if I don't do as well as I could have, would have, should have, because then there are expectations. This is what I do for a profession. So if I don't do well, I know now. If I'm an 8 on a 10 scale, I'm okay. Anything less than an 8 on a 10, I feel like I should give some of the money back. I don't, but I feel like that because this is what Mark Lundholm does, right? And I know they know. You can't.
Yeah,
no, you can't fool.
Yeah, and the problem is like I've been doing this, and you and I think your kids are now older than mine, but I have an 11 and a 13-year-old, right? And my 11-year-old, they were playing flag football and they won the game, but he was upset because he didn't play well. And I told him, I said, I completely get it. I said, baby, Dad has been doing shows for almost 43 years. I can count on both hands the amount of times I've done a show that I said, that was good. That was good.
Yeah.
But what you do is I can't control the outcome, but I can tell you this. Every time I've sat behind a microphone, I've given 100% effort. Some days going to be better than others. Golf, same way. And nobody goes to play golf to suck. Nobody goes out there and says, I want to hit this shot right into the water. You're giving the effort. It just doesn't always come out the way you hope it will.
Yeah, I might hope you hit it into the water, Gary. But I don't have 100% either, energy or crisp, that muscle that says we're and we're ripping it. We're throwing the weights around the pile in the prison yard, and I'm puffing up, and you know. But if I got 60% energy or enthusiasm, it just because I'll give 100% to 60%.
Exactly.
But I've never on a 0 to 10. I've never done a 10. I had a couple of 9s in my career, and those were important shows. Showtime, TED Talk. Those were big deals, and I happened to hit about an 8.5 or 9.
Your TED Talk is brilliant. Your TED Talk. I'm telling you guys right now, you need to look up Mark Lundholm TED Talk. And if you don't walk away from that feeling better about your life and understanding what other people are going through and how you can take whatever you're going through, be it good or bad, and make somebody else's life better and thereby make your life better, dude, I'm just telling you, Mark Lundholm TED Talk, look it up.
Well, there's a lot of people I respect. I used to adore Carol Burnett. As a kid growing up, she was a living, full functioning human cartoon. Her face, her body, she could stretch, she could morph, all this. Jim Carrey was like that. Curly from the Three Stooges was like that. But everybody in my family was like that. Who I grew up with. The difference was those three people I just named were very famous and very almost perfectionist in their craft. My family was dysfunctional and warped, and we used humor or drama or acting skills as a shield from between us and the truth or us and education. I mean, dysfunctional doesn't mean, somebody's getting extra sexual attention after dark by a family member. It doesn't always mean we're getting beaten with something in the garage that used to be a tool, right? Now, those two things in my life, those were facts. But for some people, dysfunctional means my parents didn't teach me how to deal with sad when it happened to me. How dare you be sad? You got no right to be sad. You can't tell a kid they can't be sad or that anger is disrespectful. Anger is a human emotion. Anger is one of the greatest tools I have because I've discovered that anger becomes passion to change something. If I'm angry enough at my behavior, I'll change my behavior. And if I change my behavior, I don't have to apologize later, or I don't have to repeat the same mistake. A joke in the show. Ready for people watching, listening? Here it goes, people, no matter where you're from. Over and over expecting different results is the definition of
insanity.
No, Raiders fan. Come on, pay attention. All right. So I know. And I was born in Oakland. So I didn't. But what we get to do is we get to make little changes. Birds eat many times their own weight every day to survive. Many times their own weight, or they die. I'm not going to eat more than my weight, which I've tried to do at sushi or pizza, but the birds do it little bites. They don't gorge. They don't gouge. They do little bites. So as change comes, it's little bites of this. It's little bites of that. It's little increments of light that creep into. So dysfunctional can mean I wasn't informed very well. Turns out misinformed sometimes leads to mistreated, so I was pushed a certain way as a kid to be funny, to be verbal, to be physical, to be aggressive. All that stuff works in comedy as long as it's not a shield anymore between you and I, Gary, between me and the community. All you do with your trauma, that becomes a shield. We raise it up, to a better place. Suit up, speak up, show up, grow up. And then it becomes shelter. Like funny as shelter. My kid goes to private school. I've got a decent car that's paid for. I like where I live. I can afford to go play golf with my friend Gary, right? Because shelter now. So the simple twist is trauma is a teacher or it's a perpetrator. Sometimes a perpetrator starts out as a teacher. I love my father, but I am nothing like him at this age. Nothing. I'm not a perpetrator. I'm not a racist. I'm not a cynic. I have a lot of those qualities that I could, like if you've been punished by someone, you tend to become the next jailer, of yourself kind of thing. Shortcut for you. When I say that word, I just mean, let me save you some time. If you want, this is take it or leave. This is a buffet. The attention span in the United States right now, average attention span is 6 seconds. That's why skip ads is always at 5. It's 6. So people have stopped listening 1,000 times to us already today, Gary. But if what you don't forgive, you will become. So I try to remember that when I'm working with comedians. I've worked with a lot of big, badass names, famous, right? Steve Harvey, Chappelle, Bill Burr. I've worked with, written for, people like Ellen and Jimmy and these other people because I'm funny. I have a way of crafting language into an attractive morsel or two that people say, I want a little of that. Give me some of that. Give me another one of those. So I'm a sushi chef. What do you want? I'll roll it up for you. Here we go. But language has never been a problem for me. Honesty has. Integrity has, consistency has, all those things you need to be a good person at your job or on your street. But I've worked with people that hated me or didn't want me working because I was too funny or I didn't do it the way they wanted or they just didn't like other comedians. People are real insecure when it comes to you doing their job too. So what I learned from that is I could forgive them and say, well, okay, or I can become them and beat the crap out of the next person I work with that's opening for me, right? I've been headlining a long time. Now, I don't headline Caesar's Palace in Vegas, but I've worked Caesar's Palace, and I don't headline some kind of festival in the Midwest across 50,000 people, in what used to be a farm. But I've done those shows. Headliner's a status that's in here. So I go where I'm supposed to. I work where I'm supposed to. I've headlined at San Quentin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I but I know that market and they asked me to do it. So anybody listening out there, if you're relatively happy, that was a choice you made. There's a passion to what you do. There's a purpose to what your passion is. There's a path. That's it. That's it. I love where I'm at. I don't want to be, or attempt to be bigger than I am. I used to get punched right in the face and put flat on my back when I thought I was bigger than I was, mentally, physically, verbally, professionally. I would try to knock down a door in Hollywood, banging on it or something. This is a metaphor, but I would try to, hey, look at me, this is in the 90s. I was probably sober. I got sober in 1988. So I started doing comedy then. I was kind of a backward story. I didn't just do comedy, get drunk or shoot a speedball into my neck and then, have problems. I did all my stuff, my dirt and hurt first. And then I became a comedian with some of that kind of history. It turns out some of that stuff's pretty funny when you get it in your rear view, but anyway, I tried to knock on the door, this sitcom thing. They were auditioning stuff. They finally let me audition. They said, you're the most persistent person we've had in 2 years. So, okay, come on in Friday morning at 9. And I went in there for the producer and the director and the big star that was sitting in the room. I was horrible. And the star pulled me aside. She says, you're not ready. You're not an actor. You're a wannabe actor. She said, I know that just crushed you, but I hope you learn from it because if you keep banging on doors that somebody doesn't open for you, you're going to be disappointed more than you're employed. And I walked away going, I'm going to find out where she lives, burn her house down,
First thought.
Just first thought wrong. That's my thing. First thought wrong. But I walked away going, it was like the guy on the golf course. You're not good enough to be mad when somebody doesn't invite you to do what you're not good enough to do. They know you're not good enough. They know who is. You're not on that list, big guy. So know your place. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way. But I know my place. I'm very happy with my little niche corner of the comedy market. Nobody does what I do better than me, but nobody else is me. I'm the only one of me that's ever going to be in this universe, just like you. And people are listening. There's never going to be another you in this universe. So, I love knowing that I don't have to be a DJ on the radio that is a country music fan. And he's the guy that plays all those songs and knows all those people and has those quips and speaks that language. And he's number one in the book again this month, right? That's you. That's not me. But I'm happy where I'm at until I'm not happy. And then I got to look at what's my big hangnail hassle today, Lundholm? Wah!
At Reed Animal Hospital, they treat your pet as if it was their own. Now, I'm a very satisfied customer. I can tell you they mean that. It's not a chain. It truly is about helping you and your pet enjoy life together. Dr. David Reed and his entire staff take the time to get to know you and your pet. I can tell you what I like. He's helped me better understand what my dog Luna needs and how I can take care of her more efficiently and kindly. Find them online at reedanimalhospital.com. 2 locations, Saratoga and Campbell. Little secret from me to you, Dr. Reed actually gives you his cell number so he can answer your questions and concerns. They really are committed to you and your pet. reedanimalhospital.com.
I'm with Mike and Brenda Council with another real Mike Council plumbing and rooter story. Let's talk about the early days. What was it like?
Well, when we first started, the phone was by the bed.
So just the two of you?
Exactly.
And I would answer the emergency calls in the middle of the night. I'd wake up and answer them.
2:00, I'm headed out the door.
So 30 years ago.
30 years and 6 months.
But I hear Mike Council Plumbing might have had its beginnings when you were, what, a kid?
Yeah, I grew up in a little one-room shack, and we had an outhouse out back.
An outhouse?
That's correct.
Oh, my.
And ended up with a great appreciation for indoor plumbing.
Yeah, I guess. And when you finally got it?
It was a great day.
Since 1993, the people of San Jose and the South Bay have trusted Mike Council Plumbing and Rooter for all their plumbing needs. From emergencies like a drain backup or water leak, maybe you need a new water heater or fixture installed, a gas appliance hooked up. Give Mike Council a call at 408-217-1002 or go to mcplumbing.com, an official partner of the San Jose Sharks.
You're in clean hands with Mike Council Plumbing and Rooter.
I know this is on video too, so I hope they'll forgive me in advance. But a lot of times during the day, I didn't get my upgrade on American Airlines coming home the other day. They were out of my coffee at the coffee shop, right? Amazon said it won't be delivered tomorrow. It'll be next Monday. All these little platinum problems that Mark Lundholm has. You know what I get in my head? The kid I see in my head? This guy.
Yeah, that little meme with the guy in his thumb in his mouth and shooting the bird.
That's me. That's how I get when you don't give me what I want, or I don't get what was expected by me. So I'm setting up my own little bear trap there to walk into, and I tend to do that less. But I don't know about you, but I get to make my own disappointment schedule.
Well, and that's the thing especially when it comes to the world of entertainment, that once you've lived under a bridge in Oakland, really going to having someone tell you, no, you don't get the sitcom shouldn't be that big of a deal, because as I like to say, if you don't have food, you have one problem. If you have food, now you get to have all the problems, right?
And you're right. Right. You are, my brother, because there's a gladdening effect where you look in the rearview mirror and you go, oh yeah, you know what? I've come a long way from that, but I want to remember that like it was maybe earlier today, so that there's some perspective. And I'm not talking about Pollyanna, glass half full all the time. I'm basically a depression guy. Every comedian I've ever worked with, ever, Carlin. Let's see, who else? Buddy Hackett, Gary Shandling, Jay Leno. I've been in a place to go on stage before all of those people. And what happens is I get to do similarities, like I'm as funny as, or, I'm at least enough funny to open for, or I'll hold my own. You know what I mean? I'm on the taxi squad for this particular show. I'm not in the NFL, but I'm in the taxi squad and I'm good enough to compete on a level. And then boom, we'll all go to work and do our part. It's a humility thing, but I've never met a comedian, and all those people I mentioned, and every comedian I've ever worked for or written for, they have two things in common: depression and narcissism in huge amounts. And the balance of those two, or the war between them, is what creates the conflict, which creates the funny. funny doesn't happen without conflict ever. Pick your favorite sitcom, Cheers, All in the Family, Good Times. There was always conflict. And that's what starts the comedy. Shakespeare said it. Comedy's tragedy plus time. Okay. Now, no, a better writer maybe than Willie. I don't read a lot of Shakespeare. I'm more of a Dr. Seuss guy. You know what I mean? I like it kind of simple, you know, cat in the black crack hat, weed fish, speed fish, hip fish, hoe fish. Who got my boat fish? Right. Hop on pop. That's a good one, right, Gary? Hop on pop.
Yeah, when the guy with the IQ of 150 is sitting there going, "Hey, you're not Willie Shakespeare," shut your face.
Well, and I don't know where you heard that, but that's that. Unfortunately,
I heard that from
true.
you.
I think I made the mistake of saying that out loud one time, and I forgot. Maybe it was being recorded or whatever. But that is true. And as a kid, like I had the luxury of being smart, and smart became one of the biggest handicaps in my existence.
See, that's what I wanted to go down, because you said that, and when you said it, it was like, wow, nobody has ever said that out loud.
I'm sure that there were people in some countries or some civilization that went, you know, smart's not good right now, or hey, use smart against that tornado that's coming. Just stand there and be intelligent while it wipes you out. But I relied on it way too much. Funny and smart. They were like, you know, 2 bullets in a gun that only had 2 chambers for bullets, you know, boom, boom, and I'm done. Because like in 3rd grade, I remember 3rd grade, I was in 9th grade reading and math, and I had to sit in a classroom by myself because the school didn't know what to do. Like, I was just one of those lucky kids. I could hear it and remember it. I didn't have to study, and life became easy. And there's a really good The Way We Were. Remember that movie? With,
Barbara Streisand and Robert Redford.
You know, the opening line, I think, of the whole movie is Redford. They had to write a thesis. And the opening is they're sitting in a classroom setting. I think this is an early scene, if not the first. And the line the first line in his thesis is, in a way, he was like the country he was born into. Everything came much too easy for him. And I remember that, like, I read that as a little kid, or watched that movie as a kid. And I remember thinking, that's me. I don't appreciate it. I'm not grateful. So I didn't like myself for being myself. I was already mad at me for not being grateful. I didn't know what grateful was. I thought grateful was dad didn't come home enough in time to beat us before we went to bed. Hey, man, you're lucky tonight. Well, lucky and gratitude aren't the same thing. I had a sponsor. When I got out of jail, I hooked up with this guy in the 12-step community. And I'm a 12-step guy, but I'm not here to pimp for any program. And I'm not going to mention the big letters because that's part of our thing, right? I went to a meeting yesterday. It could have been a board meeting, could have been a school meeting. You don't know. You don't, right? So I'm teasing those people a little bit. But my guy who sponsored me said, I said, you know, I got sentenced to 7 years. I only did 3. And he goes, and I said, I'm pretty lucky. He goes, are you still calling it luck? Really? You're calling it luck? And I said, what the hell are you talking about? He goes, you got mercy instead of justice. That ain't luck. That's the universe saying, get with it, kid. Get right. Don't be so smart you can't learn. And I went, boom, whoa, man, it stuck me right in the chest. So high IQ equals lower bottom for some of us. High IQ equals more failure for some of us, because I'm going to rely on my intelligence instead of my experience or my ears. Smart people don't listen as well as we should. I mean, come on. My listening skills were 0 until a certain age. And I think that was in my early 30s. I couldn't listen. Hear where to get the dope. I could hear how to get over on that company when they were closed at night. I had a lot of stuff, felonies that were not caught. You know what I mean? But I could hear the opportunity. I could hear the sound of her voice that said, she's a victim. She's easy to mount, to get. It was a conquest. I could hear, but I wasn't listening to any lessons or try, I mean, I had to work on that muscle. And if you're smart, why you got to listen to anybody else? It's really a self-inflicted wound, man.
Because when you had talked about that, and I heard your story on it, it was. I think if you're blessed with any kind of intelligence, I've always said I'm thrilled that the good Lord gave me just enough intelligence, but not much. My ex-wife was like you, genius level IQ, and she battled her brain all the time. That's why we ended up divorcing, because she goes, I don't want to have children. You need to be a father. Right. And really one of the biggest blessings. And I thank God for her faith that she's like, okay, you need to go do this because it's where you're at. But I saw her not be able to sleep. I saw her not be able to turn her brain off. And I was just smart enough to contemplate stuff, but not get too deep. I can look out into space and see the stars and not wonder how many there are or what's the size or composition. I can just enjoy the fact that, man, there's a lot of stars out there. And it's a gift. It truly is such the biggest blessing. And like when it came to entertainment, I was just smart enough to realize when I got into this business owes me nothing. When it's done with me, I'll be done. But it doesn't owe me anything. So I've never been down there beating on doors and stuff. Matter of fact, most of the jobs I've ever gotten, people offered them to me.
Yeah. That's the way life can work. And I'm not going to say should, unless I'm making fun of myself. Old lady in a treatment center I was in the 80s, she told me, Mark, you use the word should way too frequently. You use the word should. Let's not should on ourselves. Okay. I thought that's clever. And then I was mad that I didn't think it for all that stuff that smart people do. Smart people. And listen, I don't want to come off as a grandiose here, but let's just say we're talking about a large group of people who are intelligent. Not Gary, not Mark, not maybe somebody we know, but a large group of people who are intelligent. Some of them are disappointed they don't know everything already. It's like, I'm mad at myself, this person. I'm mad at myself because I don't know yet. I'm mad at myself because I had to ask you about it. I'm mad at myself. Like, we get these expectations where, geez, I don't know that yet. What's wrong with me? And there's a verbal abuse you don't hear, that it's at night in the dark when I'm by myself. I'm pounding myself verbally because I'm not as intelligent as other people have known me to be, or I've registered a certain number on a certain scale and a certain test. And then, or just, I've been at this a long time. I've been sober a long time, 35 years. Wow. And I don't have it all dialed right and tight. So there's a little voice that goes, see, you're a fraud. You're trying to fool people. And that voice is the same guy, grown up now, different, hair, different facial structure. It's got a little more wrinkles in him. That's the little guy that said, no. Go ahead. Break into the metal shop's back room. You can grab one of those tools and you can sell it for crack. That's that same little guy. He's still there. He'll outlive Keith Richards' dad. You know what I mean? He's never going away. But I know him now. And I know, hey, roll it back there, tough guy. That steel don't heal, and drinking is sinking. Come on. Cause every once in a while I still get that bottle call, years later from, I'm not a drinker. I can't drink successfully. I know that. But sometimes I forget that. I know that. And I'll be at the front of the plane and they'll say, excuse me, Mr. Lundholm, it's nice to have you with us again. Would you care for a mimosa this morning? And, my first thought wrong is, I've never had a mimosa. I got sober before Zima. I never tried White Claw. I don't know what it is. I I would like a mimosa. I want a, gosh darn it.
Do you know how tender God's mercy is on you that you've never had a White Claw?
Okay. All right. I'll take your word for it. It's like, what, Gold Hogger?
Oh my!
I never either, but I remember this. This is going to date me, maybe you. It's your call. But I used to, after work at 17 years old, as a journeyman clerk in the Retail Clerks Union, 17 years old, I'm working in Campbell, California at Food Villa in the Prune Yard. And I'm grabbing a 6-pack of Lowenbrow for breakfast.
Well, because you couldn't afford the hams. Remember hams?
Oh, listen, that hams was for old guys who watched golf on Sundays on TV, Gary. So, I do remember when breakfast was Budweiser, vodka, and Buffrin.
Buffering.
See, okay. There was no oatmeal. There's no protein smoothie, right? It was all like, I remember saving a little bit of Coke on Monday morning to go to work at the church. Right?
We used to, do you remember, because I grew up in the South, we used to have Anacin powder. It wasn't even pills. It was powder, and it was designed for you to get the headache out right now. You can put it in your soda or put it right under your tongue.
Listen, that's why you mash up your Vicodin with a mortar and pestle, dog. You got to know what you're doing. Hit you quicker, right? A lot of us learned that in jail, you know. We'd mash up the scripts they'd give us. If we had antidepressants, we'd mash that up and snort them because we like to work on daddy fast, right? So in the South, what part of the South?
I grew up right on the Florida-Alabama line. Literally, the town I grew up in was called Florida, Alabama. I went to high school in Alabama, and my brother went to high school in Florida. We lived in the same house.
Wow, dude. So I can't count the times I've been to both those states. I literally can't count them. But every time I go there, I'm amazed. Now, Florida has a little slightly southern New York flavor in a lot of places, but parts of Florida are just as swampy, slower, God-fearing, hard-working, butter-breading people as Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Arkansas, all those places where life is keep it super simple. It doesn't have to be extravagant. You don't have to drive fast. You know why? Because you don't have to.
You don't really have anywhere to be.
It used to drive me crazy. The patience level. The joke out of the show is, I've been to the South a whole bunch of times, southeastern United States. It's odd. You know what the most stark difference was between California and any state down there was down south there. When people ask you how you're doing, they wait for an answer. It's unnerving. How y'all doing? And they just look at you. In California, how you doing is a dismissal. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, how you doing? How you doing means we're done talking. Here's my taillights, the back of my head. Bye. It's just, down there, they're friendly. The food is amazing. They care about families. They have parishes, not counties. It's really kind of, not kind of, I take that back. It's really rather spiritually directed. The land seems to be already a sanctuary, a holy place. You can feel it now that my antennae are longer for threat or safety or predatory or sanctuary. I can feel a place as soon as I arrive. I don't have to hear people tell me about it. And I'm not being arrogant. It's just a sense of threat, safety. I don't smell threat here. I don't smell danger. I smell earthy. I smell slow down, Mark. I smell calm,
See, I think
I work at a place.
No, I'm saying because it's such a different world, and you and I grew up in a different world. I tell my sons all the time, right? Because 11 and 13-year-old, this is the face of optimism right here. But my son was complaining the other day because he got a B, and his mother was like, "Well, you can make that an A," and his mother wasn't home, and he goes, "It just seems like nothing's ever good enough." I said, "Well, first of all, you don't realize how your mother was raised. Her father is a doctorate." Right? He's a PhD, and she was expected to she was the valedictorian. And I said, because we also seen every time you've had a B and we've told you to pull it up to an A, you have an A. I said, but look at my experience. You never hear me talk about your grades. Why? Because where I grew up, education wasn't important. My parents didn't care what I made. I had to go to school because it was the law. But in their world, you graduated, you had your first child at 17, you worked in the factory, you died when you were 56. That's what you did. What does it matter if you have an education? Right? And I said,
Yeah.
so I tend to sit back and go a different tactic on that. I said, but I fight for you all the time. Right. With your mother, I'm like, hey, calm down. I said, here's what you need to know. Your mother fights for you because when you do something wrong, my first attitude, because of the way I'm raised, is I want you to lose your phone until you're 33 years old. Right.
Yeah,
And your mother's the one who's going, no, calm down. They're children. Here we go. I said, so it's a give and take. And I said, because of the way I was raised. In the South, it's a completely different thing. That I don't care about the little things. Go to church on Sunday, but you got an F on a test? I don't care.
Yeah. And I'm sure, Gary, I don't know, none of us know when our deathbed is, even if we're diagnosed terminal. I've worked with mental health patients for over 30 years. And, when the time comes, it comes. And there's a bigger picture than the one I can even imagine. And I got great faith in that. And the power that's higher than me says, you get your turn, tough guy, it's coming, but it might not be today. So why don't you go to work? Whiner, so, so, but I'm sure the last question, and I hope this is funny to people who are spiritual, or, if you're a biblical person, I have a great joke for you, but I'm going to save it till after the story. When you're dead, when you're dying and you hit that moment and the lights go out and you go to the next place, I'm sure that whoever's going to ask you at the gates of wherever you're going, I'm sure that they're going to ask you things like, how did you treat people? What'd you do with the gifts you were given? Because you were a very, very solid person. Were you kind to the child in your chair? Were you kind to yourself? Did you honor you? I'm sure the question's not going to be, if a train's coming from New York, there's another one coming from San Diego, right? And they're going 70 miles an hour equally on the, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be, what's the square root of 245? I just think that there's some basics, right? And, I didn't hear that in the Bible. I was an altar boy, until I wasn't. And we read the Bible and I was irritated. There were no jokes. There's not one friggin' joke in the Bible, Gary. It really irritates me. So, we talk about laughter. They talk about song. They don't talk about, hey, Jesus had a corn on his foot. They don't tell you, Peter was a fisherman. They don't. So my favorite, you got a favorite quote in the Bible, Gary?
Oh gosh, because I'm reading through everything right now on the Old Testament. I've got great stories, but my favorite line and the most quintessential line is, and neither do I judge you. Go and sin no more. That
awesome. Mine is be fruitful and multiply. Oh, you know where you can find that in the Bible? That's in Philippians chapter 2.
Philippians.
Verse 68, I think it is there. And so if I tell that story at a spiritual retreat for men in Eugene, Oregon, they go ballistic. It's hilarious. The men if I do that joke in the parking lot after a Baptist service in Memphis, Tennessee, they're going to run me past the barbecue into the pit and light me on fire because it's irreverent or sacrilegious or disrespectful. I'm overdosing. I'm exaggerating both scenarios, but part of comedy is let's blow it out of proportion so we see how simple it is.
And I love somebody gave me the best advice when I was reading the Bible. Dear friend of mine, she goes, Jesus was human in every way. So when you read the Bible, add in facial expressions because he communicated with his face. So there's sometimes you see these things and it sounds like he's going, He's probably doing like we do and go, really?
Yeah.
And that's where, you go, oh, that changes everything. Now that you start going in that.
Well, you gotta think that for a person, a human being, divinely delivered, all that stuff, but pretty humble, Not, I mean, he was way more advanced than Hitler, and Hitler was a little bit braggadocio, on something. He just went, I'll settle for 12 guys. That's cool. Let's go. And they're fishermen, so they smell bad. They're not, they're not, opposed to hard work, but, they're grimy, get your hands dirty kind of thing. I can imagine him, somebody coming up and go, Lazarus, he lives. You did. And Jesus goes, well, it's what I do. Kind of. Okay.
When you sit back and start doing it, I love looking at the biblical scholars. You talk about the 12 guys. The 12 guys, not only were they 12 guys, honestly, they were probably 12 kids. We tend to think of them as adults. They were probably 14, 15, 16 years old.
Maybe that's a good point. I never thought of it like that. I did think of this though. There were actually in the end, there were 13 apostles. They had to replace one of those guys.
Yeah.
They still had 12 after Jesus went down and then went up, right? But can you imagine? I'm pretty sure it was Matthew. It was a Matthew that replaced Judas, right? Now, can you imagine them saying, "Hey, you're welcome. You're going to be the 12." Well, who's the other guy? Well, let me tell you, he was just. And Matthew thought, "Dude, that's a low bar. I think I could pass that guy up." I can't do any worse than that knucklehead, right? So there's some stuff that I wish. I'll make fun of, but I can't do it everywhere. I got to pick my spots. Like, your listeners, right? Following you now. I appreciate you asking me because evidently I fit into a category where Gary thinks this is going to entertain people, and I'm happy to serve. But all of us have a calling, Jesus just, his general was a little bigger than mine, but it's the same, I get to do what I'm best at as long as I know that it's about, I'll always say this at work that, listen, I'm really good at what I do because it's important to me. If it's important to you, it means I did my best. So my gift to me is I'm humorous. I get to draw a crowd. I can entertain once they're there. I can read a room. I know who's in there. I prepare. Every show I've ever done, Gary, that's gone well was 90% preparation, 10% presentation. But it's 90%. Before I hit the stage, I know the set list. I know the mood. I know the language, PG plus, R minus, Disney, that. But you and I got gifts. And our gift back to the universe is let's enhance those gifts. And there's no self, grandiosity. There's no personal gain other than compensation. I mean, I got a minimum I work for, and I've got a maximum I'll take. I don't take any money for jails or prisons or shelters or places with no budget. I've never taken a penny because I feel it's my way to give back. I was locked up a lot, and it's my way to give back. B, if you take money from the system, the county, the state department, Folsom Prison, they get to tell you what to say. You have to sign a contract, and there's limits. I don't let anybody tell me how to talk in a jail or prison. Now, I'm not going to misuse that. I'm not going to abuse that privilege. But no one tells me content when I go to talk to a bunch of inmates who want to learn how to stay out this time. Anybody can get out. I'll show you how to stay out, man. And so I don't want the system telling me what language to use because then I'm part of the system. And those guys are tired of hearing yak, yak, wah, wah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Here's my problem. I didn't even get to a third of what I'd hoped to talk to you about today, because I told you I don't have questions. I just knew because, as you said, I prepared. And the more I got into you, the more interesting you became. And there's so much to your story that we glossed over your background. We glossed over sleeping on the street. We glossed over your father. And you and I have a lot in common when it comes to fathers, except even though he was a pedophile with my sisters, he never treated me bad. Right. But he, but he was a drug addict and alcoholic. And,
wow.
And
how did you not make the short list of that? How did you not? That's interesting to me. Maybe we talk about that next time.
And yeah, and it's the same thing when it comes to it. I as far as living our life, I always tell my sons, it was a gift that I didn't know was a gift, because if I had to sum him up in one word, it would be disappointing. He didn't come to anything I ever did. I can remember coming home and finding him drunk, passed out in front of a fan with the fan hitting him in the head. And all of this stuff. I said, when I had children, it became my goal that you may say a lot of things about me, but one thing you will never say is I disappointed you. Right. And so that ended up being a gift for me, because it made me cling to my faith. It made me go deeper into my faith, because I found that's where true joy is. That's where I'm happier than I've ever been in my entire life. And I'm probably more ensconced in my faith than I've ever been. But I would love to hear the dichotomy that you and I went through different places, because you went to a very dark place. I can honestly say I didn't.
And to the short version of that is, trauma is a teacher. Disappointment is a teacher. Poor example is a teacher. If I'm a student, I get to garner some kind of information or new GPS direction as a human from that. Like, forgiving my father prevented me from becoming my father. For a lot of years, I wouldn't forgive. I was going to punish. But I became as angry as, I became as punitive as, I became as judgmental as that guy I didn't want to be anything like. So that little shift is fine. The second thing I want to tell you, as we're closing up here, I could tell.
Well, no, I'm just being respectful of your time. I'd asked for an hour, and I didn't want to take more than that.
I'd like to do this again. I enjoyed you, and I really appreciate the honor of being on your show. The second thing is, out of all that you said, the phrase I heard was, the more I got into you, the more interesting you became. I got 2 ex-wives that'll tell you, Gary, you're out of your mind right now. I got 2 ex-wives tell you, Mark's not that interesting after you live with him a while. I got 2 I love them. They're phenomenal people. Listen, that joke cost me about $9,500 a month. So But listen, both my ex-wives and the other baby, I got 3 kids from 3 different mothers, Gary. I got 5-year-old, a 25-year-old, and a 16-year-old child. I'm a gilf. My first daughter has a kid now. So I'm old, but I got 3 all over the map. Every 10 years I used to make a kid. I think I'm about due this weekend, Gary. I think maybe I'll country and western concert, Gary.
I can hook you up. I can make that happen.
If you would wish on some poor soul, I feel like maybe you are a very, very good guy. Don't disappoint me, Gary.
Because it's so much fun, and to what a blessing it is to me that I got to meet you at this stage of your life, where the joy that comes through you is palpable. And when you say you do comedy in the mental health lane, you find the comedy in the mental health lane, but you do it with nothing but compassion and complete honesty. You don't BS people around. You like, here's the truth. And yet when you do it, it's not a judgment thing, but you do call people on their own lies.
I will tell you, and listen, if you're over, I'm going to guess maybe median age 35. If you're over 35, you kind of get worn out with the BS or the wrapper that the truth comes in. When the truth shows up, the excuses disappear. When the truth shows up, the denial is lessened, because if enough people are telling you something, it's probably got a relative amount of truth to it. So all I've learned is, as I work, I don't have time, or honestly, the patience. I don't have the patience to wade through all the muck, yuck, to get to, hey, you want to fix that? I can give you some help, but you got to be honest. The more truth you tell, more help I can give you. That's what my kid, Grayson, he goes to Valley Christian High School. He's 16. He's a junior, and he's got girl problems right now. And he's got honesty problems because he'd rather impress than address insecurity or whatever. So He's struggling with that right now. She's important to him. He doesn't remember that he's important to him too. And you can't touch him on the head and give it to him. You got to watch it. So I'll tell him, he'll say, Dad, I got a problem with my girlfriend. And I'll say, stop, please. I want to hear your emotion. I want to hear how you feel. Oh, but so we go from his girlfriend to him. And all I did was say, stop, just stop. I don't want to hear wow about she went out. She talked to this other guy after the game. She's a head cheerleader and I'm only a junior. She's a senior. Let me hear how you feel about that. Tell me how you feel. Cause I want him to be able to share sad, to know that mad is appropriate, to know that fear becomes faith and respect instead of just paralysis. Right. So all that stuff comes with time. The joke is, I hope this is funny to people. You ever confuse serenity with fatigue? I'm not serene. I'm just too tired to argue with your dumb ass. You know what I mean? Somebody say, you were calm. No, it's nap time. I gotta go.
I have stolen one of the I have stolen one of the things you said, and I did it too a couple of years ago. Right, I stole one of the.
Okay,
but this was one of the things. My son was out in the garage, and my wife was getting ready to leave, and there was an old big hardwood desk that we had taken apart, and it was stacked up, and somebody was supposed to come pick it up, and I'm in the house, and all of a sudden I hear it fall, and I run outside, and he had pushed it, not meaning to, and knocked it over. And I was afraid, and I was like, what are you doing? And my wife comes in and she goes, are you okay? I said, what? She goes, I was in the car with the car on and I could hear you yelling. And I'm like, oh my God. And so I made that promise to myself. I said, I will never raise my voice to him again, because all it did was made him afraid. And where my voice was, and I pulled him aside and I said, the only reason I yelled at you is because I was so afraid. And there's nothing on this world that I love more than you. But I promise you this, I will never raise my voice to you again. And so now I've learned that when I'm upset or feel like I really need something to say, I get very quiet.
Yeah.
And he hears me. And I'm like, oh, yeah, now come here. Let's talk about this.
You create a closeness like, huh? Yeah. What? I learned that one late. Grayson was probably, I don't know. When I was 48, he was born, my ex-wife, his mom, the plaintiff, she is 50 years younger than me. And, she likes that joke, because of the check. But, she's a good person. She would be fine with this interview too. She'd go, is that all you said? You were kind of tank. So she's like that. She's a little bit of, is that all you got, schoolboy? Huh? She was fun to be with, man. She would say to you, why don't you get a running start next time, schoolboy? Right? That's funny. So all that stuff that you went, right? So, but she would say to me all the time, she goes, why do you yell at him? He's 5. What's your excuse? And so I kind of at about 8 years old, I think, I finally said to him, hey, I'm tired of yelling at you. Are you listening to me? He goes, what? And I said, come here. And he walked right up to me. I'm mad at him. And he came toward me. When did you get that with your dad? I'm mad at him. And he came toward me. My dad's mad. I'm going to Utah, Gary. Get out of here. So we create that kind of, let's come together on a conversation instead of, wow, right? And I'll always say this, volume doesn't substitute for content. I raised my voice. I just lowered my standards as a father. So I'd rather do the opposite. So that works. Can we do this again?
Yes, I would love to. I would love to go ahead and get our time together. And also, I'll say this on the podcast, but we need to meet together at the shop and have a cigar.
Yeah. Okay. You want to do the podcast there?
We will. I can bring my phone and see if I can do it. But let me wrap this up right now. Hold on for me. You stay on with me real quick. This has been Mark Lundholm, and we will have the second episode coming up soon.